Hello everyone, it is time for another end of year, which means we are going to go over my favorite and also least favorite books of 2022. Now I would like to preface this. I have seen some people say that they're against the concept of bottom 5 lists, and I get that. If you only want to watch positive stuff, sure. I, as a channel, am pretty positive by nature because I like most books. I'm pretty good at finding books that I'll really like, partially because of the wonderful community that surrounds me. And I also just don't find, like, rant reviews super fun. Like, I find them unnecessary. But that being said, I also don't think I have an obligation to be positive. I think I have an obligation to be fair. So while these books were not books that I particularly enjoyed, I would say I'm apathetic before 2 and disliked 3 of them. I'm going to try and be fair to them. And obviously it goes without saying that if you're an author watching this and seeing one of your books on this would distress you, maybe don't watch it. I'm not, like, because it could be. If you're an author, I don't know why you're watching these. But anyways, I wanted to get that preface out of the way. So I'm not necessarily going to be nice, but I'm going to try and be fair. And I like most of the books I read. So the first 2 I thought were, and also, don't take this like, I have nothing against any of the authors of people. None of these books that I disliked did I think were, like, problematic, and I think, like, it says something bad about the author as a person. No. I just didn't enjoy reading them. Anyway, so with that out of the way, we're going to get into me being able to complain a little bit, because, normally I'm pretty positive, so this is an opportunity for me. And coming in the number 5 spot is a book that I don't think is badly written, but just had some elements that I found annoying. Definitely had some nitpicks about, but it had a cool setting and a good start. And it's definitely not a book I disliked. It was just a book where I read and I was like, cool. And that is City of Brass. This is, I think it's marketed as YA Fantasy. Who cares? Why is it marketed? We're not even going to bring that up. I really enjoyed the setting, like the actual City of Brass part. It had a bunch of stuff based on more like Eastern mythology, like jinns, which were really cool. But there were a couple things that just soured me a little bit. One is just I found it slightly forgettable. Like, I had to go look through my reactions and review because I was like, what happened to this book again? Which, there's some books that I read earlier in this year that are going to be on the other list. Actually, even some of the ones I disliked they're very memorable why I disliked them. This one I just kind of was just like, didn't stick in my brain that much. 2 things that now, after going through, I was like, oh yeah, that did annoy me. I found for one of the point of views, there was a very repetitive conflict where basically the person who was trying to be, like, morally ambiguous and, like, gray, and they would just alternate. Like, they would, they'd see some like, injustice, and they'd be like, oh, this cannot be tolerated. Then they'd go talk to someone, and they'd be like, okay. And then they'd go and see an injustice and be like, oh, this cannot be tolerated. And this repeated a few times, and I was just like, dude, can you stop? I'd like to remind people of this, like, how hard is it to actually change people's mind when they think they're right, like, in real life? This has annoyed me in other books. This is the thing that kind of comes across as ungenuine. People just, like, give a speech or, like, say something, and people are just like, you've convinced me completely. Like, it's really hard to change people's mind. You can show, like, definitive proof of something, and people will still not change their mind. And I was like, this guy changed his mind, like, 6 times. And then the other was just, which apparently it kind of gets subverted later, but for book 1, it was the classic, hey, look, we have our young female protagonist who's going to run into this 1,400-year-old hot dude with a really dark past, and another character who's a bit nerdier and is the young female protagonist's age. I wonder if there will be manufactured conflict between them. And there was. And it was annoying. It was as annoying as I expected it to be. So that's the thing that held me back from, like, liking City of Brass more. But I still thought it was a fine novel, and presumably some people really like that trope, or it wouldn't sell. Like, thousands of novels. So if you want to read about that, this is probably, I mean, it's well written. Like, I think the author is, I don't think the author's like a bad writer or something. I just think there were a couple things that I wasn't a big fan of and largely wasn't the target audience for this novel. So not really going to get ranted about that much. Let's move on to number 4. Next up, I have a book that won a Hugo and a Nebula for Best Novella. And also actually was read in the book club. A really shocking amount of these came from our university book club. But to be fair, we also read some books I loved in the university book club. So it kind of balances out and got to talk to them about people. So, but that book club, it's coming up for a future spot as well. And this was a novella that many people in the book club felt didn't work great as a novella and should have been longer. And that is Binti. Very, very, very short book. Like big font as well. It's like 25,000 words. I thought it was pretty mid. I don't like, there's some like fantasy Hugo novella winners where I read it and I was like, yes, that deserved it. Like, I think the 5th season deserves all the praise it gets. This book, I don't see it. There were some things I liked. I think like the writing was good. Like, I don't think the author is a bad writer. Which actually, I don't think, there's been some top lists where I'm like, this person, like, from a technical writing from like a writing standpoint, like, I don't like. I think all the writers on this, like, they're fine. It had some stuff that really, okay, so everything is math in this book. Like, the person thinks, they're just like, when they're stressed, they just think of math equations. And I'm not a mathematician, so I just kind of rolled with it. And then there were a bunch of math majors in, like, the university book club who were like, no, this was really stupid. And I was like, okay. But I thought there was one part that, I mean, sometimes telling is better, sometimes showing is better. This was one of those more egregious tell, don't show, where someone showed up and there's a new group and they're just like, and then they actually became really close friends with me. And I was like, huh. And then there's a big, like, thing that happens. And I will say, I found, like, then later, it seems like people just ignored the consequences of this and were just, like, really fine with things. And I thought the ending was really weird. And it was kind of like, okay, I know, like, power of friendship, but also, like, didn't this person do a murder? I feel like we should care more about that. And I thought the end, I think it needed more pages to make the end make sense. Yeah. I will say I really like the aliens. I'm a big fan of sci-fi aliens who aren't just like humans with like a different forehead, but actually are like weird and completely different to people, because I think that's probably a lot more likely than Vulcans. And I think that was done well, and the writing was pretty good, and some of the setting was good, but I think it just went over some things way too fast, and a lot of, like, things were just kind of forgotten about for a pretty messy ending. So I actually originally, I gave this a 6 and City of Brass a 5.9. So originally I actually gave City of Brass a lower score than this. In hindsight, I think City of Brass is better than this novel. I might drop it to like a 5.5. Even though the writing was pretty good. And I feel like I was almost like in my head pressured to like it, because I'm like, oh, it's a Hugo and a Nebula winner, and I also knew it was like going to be the first month of the book club, so there's going to be a ton of people, and I wanted to be positive. But in hindsight, I'm kind of like 6 may have been a bit generous, and I think I would lower it to like closer to a 5. Anyway, that's Binti. It was fine. Okay, and coming in for the number 3 spot, we have yet another book club read. The last 2 aren't, I promise. And this was kind of funny because, like, only one person in the club liked it, and they weren't at the meeting. So the meeting, like, when we were talking about it, we just kind of crapped on it, which was fun. That being said, again, I think this is just mislabeled. This Daughter of the Moon Goddess is the novel that I'm talking about. This novel. And by Sulin Tan, I think. Anyway, and this novel is a romance novel. Like, if you like romance novels, I'm not going to be the judge on if you'd like this, because I don't read a lot of pure romance novels, so I don't have, like, a method of comparison. But other people who like romance novels seem to like it. So presumably, if you like romance novels, there's a good chance you like this book. I think as a romance novel, it's probably pretty good. As an epic fantasy novel, I think it fails completely, which I will now elaborate on. So I want to start with the premise of this is basically it's classic romance plot, but the characters are like immortals from Chinese mythology, which sounds cooler than a normal romance plot. And the biggest thing I have that's actually like a critique of the execution of this novel, and not just this wasn't for me, is that them being immortals from Chinese mythology basically doesn't affect the plot at all. And I think you could remove that aspect and the plot would stay exactly the same. Like, it's just an aesthetic detail and not an actual fundamental part of the story. And not only that, I actually think it causes plot holes. Like, okay, so it's a romance, which means guess what? There's going to be people who are like, we're in love, and then there's going to be an obstacle. One of the obstacles is people are really concerned about the line of succession. They're immortal. The dude who's like the emperor or whatever has been the emperor for thousands of years, and he has one teenage child, which means there was no heir for thousands and thousands of years, and everything was fine. But now he's like, not only do I need an heir, my heir needs to have an heir. Like, we need two backup. And I'm like, you are immortal, and you have been in charge for thousands of years. Why are you worried about this? Like, this makes no sense. And so I just don't, and I just think it lacked depth. All right? Like, if I'm being completely honest, I think the characters were pretty one-dimensional. I will say the writing was good. Like, there were some really good passages. From a prose standpoint, like, I was actually impressed with the prose. Sometimes I think it maybe got a bit purple, but usually it was pretty clear and was, like, I think, clearly good writing. I do think, like, sometimes it was, when I say, the thing is, even if it was, I think, a bit purple at times, I think that fit with the setting. So I think the prose was good. And if you like romances, I guess the story was good. But I think, for an epic fantasy novel, like, does the world building, I think, have any depth? Not really. Are there complex, multifaceted characters? Not really. Like, the things that, is there deep exploration of themes? Not really. This book does the thing that tilts me, which is, like, the final passage. It's like, here's the moral of this story. Which, one, is just annoying. But two, the thing that we're then told at the end is the moral of the story doesn't fit with the story at all. Like, no correlation. It feels like it was just written separately. Like, the person was just like, some editor was like, you need to have a moral. And they're like, okay. And they didn't bother to be like, hey, what's actually the moral of the story? Is there a moral of the story? Who knows? So yeah, I think, yeah, as a romance, it's probably pretty good. If you want to read an epic fantasy for like an epic fantasy story, I'd highly recommend reading almost anything else. Yeah. So I gave this 4 point something out of 10. This was a book I disliked. I would have DNF'd it if it wasn't a part of the book club. And actually, we'll preface this next. Next book. Okay, I have to preface something. I did not finish this book. I DNF'd it 51% in. So when I say I didn't like this book, I'm saying I did not like the 51% of it that I read. If you want, you can claim that the last 49% is a literary masterpiece, and I'm not gonna go read it to go see if I disagree, because I don't care. But I just want to say, any judgment I say for this book is only for the 51%. I'm making no quality judgment for the remaining 49%. I acknowledge that there is a chance that if I read the entire book, I would like it more. You can also acknowledge that if I read the entire book, there's a chance I would hate it more, and it would be 1 on here. But who knows? Maybe the last 50% is brilliant. I'm never going to find out, because it made me not care in the first 51%. So we're going to move on. And the book that I am talking about in the number 2 spot is Shorefall by Robert Jackson Bennett. Another book that I don't have physically because I gave away, which is why I'm going to have physically all the books for my top list, but not for this, because I gave them away to people who will hopefully like them more. All right, Shorefall. So I read Foundryside last year, and I thought it was a good novel. I didn't think it was like super deep, but I thought it was fun. It was really well paced, and I think the magic system is really cool. It's a hard magic system, scriving, where you can basically like give objects like new laws of the universe that they believe. Like, you can convince an object that, like, gravity pulls up, for example. Really cool, really well used in creative ways, and that book was really well paced. In Shorefall, I think the magic system is still really cool. Like, it's fantastic. That's the only part of Shorefall that I liked, unfortunately. It just, like, pacing-wise, wasn't getting me to turn the page. I wasn't particularly invested in the characters. I just didn't find them particularly engaging. And the actual thing, like, I would have, if that was it, I would have just kept reading and been like, that was just pretty fun, whatever. It was fine, and it would have been like 4 or 5 on this list. But there is a character who gets introduced in this book who is thousands of years old, who I hate. And I don't mean I hate them like as a person, like I love to hate them. I mean I hate reading about them. I'm somewhat picky when it comes to really old characters. I think most really old characters kind of feel like they're 40. This 1,000-year-old character felt like... I'm going to say something mean here. If you're watching this, Robert Jackson Bennett, please leave. I'm about to say something mean. This character felt like it came from the imagination of a 12-year-old of what a mega powerful multi-thousand-year-old character would be. Like, they just monologued and talked. And it's like, shut up. I have never believed a character is really old, less than this, and they have this, like, catchphrase, like, the problem with might is there's always someone mightier, and I think it's supposed to be, like, a cool catchphrase, but every time I was just like, is that true, though? Like, do you even believe that? You think you're the mightiest. Like, that wouldn't even be true if you weren't here. This person would be the mightiest. You're accomplishing everything just through might. What is even going on? This doesn't make sense, and, this character got introduced, and it was a steep nosedive. I very rarely cringed more while reading about a character. It was something that I could have forgiven if I thought it was, like, a really excellent book, but I just don't think it was. I thought it was on pace to be fine, and then this character showed up, and I was just, like... At first I was like, I don't like this, and then I got a couple more and every time there was a scene with them, it made me just not want to read it. And it got one of the only books I've DNF'd in the last 3 years. So yeah, a lot of people like this series. Cool. I cannot. I thought it was fun. Like, it annoyed me because I think the magic system is really cool. Like, Scriving, it's one of my favorite hard magic systems, but I just didn't like... Well, I liked the story of Foundry Side, but for this, I just didn't like the story or characters, especially this one, who... He's worth it. He's the reason I DNF'd it. Anyway, so that's Shorefall. Yeah, whatever. And we are now going to move to the number 1 spot. And coming in the number 1 spot, this time it was really close, actually, between these 3. Like, Emperor's Blades, I just said what the book is Emperor's Blades by Brian Staveley, a book that not only I thought was just not very good, but it also destroyed Alan from the Library of Alexandria. And for that, I think deserves the number 1 spot. Yeah, so... Emperor's Blades. For those who don't know, this was a read-along on Alan's channel, and it did not go particularly well. I was one of the first people to read it, so unlike the others, I cannot be like, I just went in expecting it to be bad. I started it, I read the prologue, and I was like, that prologue was really cool, and I was really excited, and then it just kind of kept getting worse. And I've soured on it since I've read it, because even the part... There's 3 main POVs for this book. Like Caden... Valen, maybe, and some other girl who can't sit in the unhewn throne. That one was this person, like, a woman cannot sit in the unhewn throne. I wasn't annoyed by that part until Sarah, Alan, and Jimmy said it 600 times. But basically, what I ended up realizing is the plot I liked the most was Caden's plot, and I don't think Caden's plot was good. And I think I just only liked it relatively, and it wasn't the one that had the most page time. I don't even know his name. I think it starts with a V. Valen, who's an assassin Navy SEAL death man, who's, I don't actually know, like, if you were to ask me to please explain why this character is compelling, I can't come up with anything about him that's compelling. I think he was on one of my character tier lists, and I threw him into the sun. I think he's not a Gary Stu. He's flawed. I actually he's just flawed in such a he's just incompetent. He's just an idiot. And the thing, he's trained to be this super soldier, and they're constantly but I forget the name of them. These super soldiers are so much better at fighting than everyone else. I'm why is the main character so useless then? You'd think he'd be good at things. There's a lot of really ridiculous trials. I think there are just plot holes in this novel. A lot. Almost every chapter, I think, has a plot hole. Some of them are really minor. Some of them are not minor. This has one of the most, ridiculous chapters I've ever read in how contrived it was, where they show up and start, asking someone about someone who's died. And then as they're interviewing someone else comes and asks them for a favor. And they're okay, we'll help you to do you a favor, even though it will distract us from this investigation. And then, shockingly, that favor ends up being, oh, look, this person who you're looking for has died. And they've been dead for 10 days, and they were a prostitute, and no one had noticed they were dead until now. And now, in this chapter, 6 people are going to come and be why is this person dead? And there's a lot of stuff like that. There's a lot of people trying to, force enlightenment through just abusing people. There's this school where it's people are trying to get enlightened, and it's we're gonna sit in the sun. I'm you're not gonna get enlightened, you're just gonna get skin cancer. Guy got put in a hole for a week and was given 1 glass of water every 3 days. That is not how dehydration works. Life is not a video game. You do not have a dehydration bar that resets to full once you have water. Past 2 days of dehydration, you need to go to the hospital because your organs are failing. Okay? You can't have... I think the quote is they poured a cup of water on his lips every 3 days. So he's dead. There was a trial, a legal trial, in the woman who can't sit the unhewn thrones, plot. That was one of the most ridiculous trials I've ever seen in my entire life. I have no idea, what. So yeah, there we go. We got a little ranty. Oh, and I wish I could plan this is it has plot holes and, maybe not super deep, but hey, at least it's fun to read. But it's not really that. There's not that much plot. I legitimately think the book it's a 450-page book. I think it could have started on page 350. Basically, at any point it gets to just potential. It has cool ideas the flying birds. The setup for the final act was cool, and then once again it was biffed. Which basically just does the entire thing again. It's first 350 entire book, really cool ideas. Kind of crap the bed. End of the book. Cool setup. Kind of crap the bed. It had something that tilts me, which is someone only acted in a way because we knew a secret. But when you because we know that the main characters know something, but they don't know that the main characters know something, and it's completely ridiculous that they acted that way. And there was a moment in the end of this book where I was if this happens, because it's something monumentally stupid, and I was basically, if this monumental stupid thing results in them being dying or permanently injured, I will read the next book. But no, the monumentally stupid, it was actually, the narrative treated it as a good decision and a triumphant decision. I don't get it. So the thing that makes this my least favorite book of the year, I actually didn't enjoy reading it less. I enjoyed reading it about the same as the others. But the thing is, I'm not the target audience for Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I'm maybe not the target audience for... Shorefall is kind of similar, but I'm not the target audience for Daughter of the Moon Goddess, so of course I didn't enjoy it. I don't really think I'm the target audience for City of Brass, and I still enjoyed it a lot more than this. I think I am the target audience for this, which is what I don't get. It has a bunch of stuff. It starts with, the Emperor dying. It's one of my favorite things. It's Malazan and the Sarantine Mosaic. And it just... Yeah. The writing's actually pretty good, though. The prose. The prose for all of these is actually pretty good. Robert Jackson Bennett's is fine. It's very serviceable. It's very clear. I don't think any, prose-wise, any of these were, terrible. But, man, I just think, it reminded me, every time I watch, a TV show, I'm wow, this is a lot more plot holes than books do. And this reminded me of, TV, and how many things that I think were just errors are in this book. where it's like it's not even like where there's a bunch of stuff in this book where I'm just like, that's just an error, like that's just a plot hole, like that just should have been fixed by your editor, or or another draft. Like I don't know how these were in here, and I don't know. I don't know. Like some of these other books, I think Daughter of the Moon Goddess, if someone was like, oh yeah, like there was a specific person who, if they were like, I'm looking for this in a book, I could be like, yeah, you can try Daughter of the Moon Goddess, or you can try Binti, or you can try Shorefall, or you can try City of Brass. City of Brass would be the one I'm most likely to recommend by far. I think, well, maybe Daughter of the Moon Goddess if someone wants romance, but I think City of Brass, like quality-wise, is the best of these 5 pretty comfortably, and it's my favorite of the 5. I literally don't know who I would recommend this to. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know who I would ever give this to. I'm very confused by it. I don't get it. I feel like I'm missing something. So for those who like The Emperor's Blades, I'm sorry if I've made you upset. I want to know what you like about this novel. I'm legitimately curious. I don't think it was like egregiously horrible. Like, it's not like there's some like bits you read from books that have like a 1.5 on Goodreads and it's like, oh my god, that's awful. Like Reaper's Creek by Onision, if you look at it's like, this is awful. I don't think writing wise it's awful. I don't get what separates it and would make it better than any other 5,000 novels. Okay, I've been mean enough to Emperor's Blades now. Had to get that off my chest. Didn't do a review for any of these, so this is, I can get it all out in one video and release the tension. So next video will be my top 10 favorite books, and I'll talk about things I really like, and authors who I think are genius, who executed stories masterfully, and are very much worth reading. Yeah, let me know, actually. I mean, I feel like if you like Daughter of the Moon Goddess, it's probably because you like romances, so I get most of them. I kind of be like, oh yeah, I get that. If you really like The Emperor's Blades, please let me know why in the comments below. If you've read any of these, let me know what you think of them. Do you really like them? Do you also dislike them? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. This is, of course, all of these are my opinion. Just because I don't get why people would like The Emperor's Blades does not mean I think people are wrong if they do like The Emperor's Blades. I just don't get it why they have that opinion. This is likely a me problem. And this is, of course, just my opinion for all of these. I am, of course, not saying that if you like these books that you are wrong, or if you like these authors you're wrong, or that I have anything against all of these authors as people. Brian Staveley actually seems like a lovely bloke, so he's got that going for him. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Have a nice day, everyone.